Hello and welcome back to the Faith and Culture Show. I'm so glad that you're here this week. I have a very interesting guest that really focuses on writing books about what is going on. This, remember, is the show where we learn how to engage our culture with conversations that count, conversations with an eternal perspective. So today I am so delighted to have on a gentleman named Troy Anderson. He is a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist. He's a best-selling author of The Military Guide to Armageddon, The Military Guide to Disarming Deception and Your Mission in God's Army. He is also the Vice President and COO of Battle Ready Ministries and the founder and president of the Inspire Literary Group and co-host of Frontline. So I can't wait for us to learn a little bit more about him and his ministry so that we can be encouraged to talk to others about the different facets of ministry in our world today. Welcome to the show, Troy. It's very nice to meet you, first of all. And I am excited to hear more about the different ministries that you're in and why you chose those paths of ministry for what you do. So please just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's great to be on your show, Catherine. Well, I guess the story really sort of starts when I was a little boy. My grandmother her name was Trella Hope Schiller, and she was a descendant of Frederick von Schiller, the Ode to Joy, the poet who wrote Ode to Joy that Beethoven set to music in the Ninth Symphony. He wrote a number of famous plays like William Tell and Don Carlos, which is the inspiration for George Lucas's Star Wars and things like that. So when I was a little boy, she would spend hours and hours just talking to me about Schiller. And so she just always talked about him and encouraged me to follow in his footsteps. And I really didn't know what the big deal was. So I went to college and wasn't really sure what I was going to do. At one point, my dad said, why don't you try journalism? I think you'd be good at that. And so one day I decided to go to the library and I looked up Schiller. And sure enough, there was like a 8 by 10 foot section of books about Frederick von Schiller at the University of Oregon Library. And I was just sort of blown away by who is this guy, And so I, became a journalist, and I was a reporter at the LA Daily News and other newspapers for 2 decades. And that led to becoming the executive editor of Charisma Magazine and Charisma Media. And along the way, I think it was 2009, a guy at church said there's going to be this prophecy conference at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. And so I've always been interested in prophecy. And so I talked to my editor to let me cover that. And I went there. There's about 3,000 people there. Tim LaHaye wrote the Left Behind series, was there. And my first co-author, Paul McGuire, was there. And he said, while he was speaking, he said, the world is undergoing the greatest transformation since the Tower of Babel, a coming global government, cashless society, and universal religion. And when he said that, I just sort of flashed back to when I was little and all these people, these Jesus people from Southern California invaded my hometown and one in their VW vans. And one of them had trained under Hal Lindsey at the UCLA Light and Powerhouse Seminary. He gave me a copy of Late Great Planet Earth. So I've always been interested in prophecy. And so when McGuire said that, I thought, my God, if this is true, this is one of the biggest stories in the world. And so we became friends, and that began this whole decade-long investigation. Are we really moving into these end-time events the Bible talks about? And I've now written 5 #1 bestsellers, and the 6th book, Your Mission in God's Army, just came out 2 days ago.
Wow. Now, so when was this first prophecy conference that you went to in Chino Hills? What year?
Yeah, that was 2009, and I covered that for the Daily News. And then I also wrote a cover story for Charisma Magazine called Last Days Fever. So that was sort of the beginning of this whole dozen-year investigation looking at the evidence.
So I know that many people say things like, when I talk about the end times, I've been even, I guess, chastised at my own, where I go to church. I don't really call it my church. What is my obsession with the end times? And I was trying to be respectful. And so I didn't turn around and say, well, it just happens to be that we're living in it. And I think people need to know. But I at that moment, it just didn't fit with what was being said. So this is amazing. Here you are. You weren't even thinking along these lines. What strikes you the most as what's the difference between the past generations who said, oh, well, we've got to be ready, everything is in place, and really it wasn't. So that's what I get back from a lot of people. Look, people say every generation says that these are the end days. Well, they have been. Jesus said that. But what strikes you as someone who's done so much research in this area that these really we are in the last stages?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. For 2,000 years, there's been many predictions that, people thought this was the period of time that would precede the second coming of Christ. And especially in the late 60s and early 70s, when I mentioned about Hal Lindsey's book, there was a lot of interest in the church at that time. I mean, people wear like Jesus is Coming T-shirts and do Bible studies on this topic and that kind of thing. But then there was a book that came out in 1988. It was called 88 Reasons Why. It was like why the rapture will happen in 1988. I think written by a former NASA guy. Anyways, of course, nothing happened, right? And so it gave Bible prophecy a bad name. And so after that point, and I think it sold like 2 million copies, after that point, the church sort of largely shied away from Bible prophecy for several decades. And it's only like in the last decade or so that you've seen, some churches talking about it, but, many different ministries, and of course, many different books coming out. And so I think what's different today is another book I just wrote, Revelation 9:11. We listed 50 signs Jesus and the prophets told us to watch for that would indicate we could be moving into this period of history. When you compare those to today's headlines, it seems like many of those are either in some stage of fulfillment or have already been fulfilled. In fact, there's about 2,500 prophecies in the Bible, and about 2,000 have been fulfilled to exacting detail. And so the Bible tells us only God knows the day and hour. And,
Right.
and I believe, I did an interview with Billy Graham in 2013, and he said when God sent the prophet Jonah to Nineveh to warn them of judgment, that the king and the people repented, and he believed the same thing could happen again this time in America. So I believe we're at a stage now where we could move into these end time events that the Bible talks about, what the book of Revelation talks about. But I think God's put the ball in our court.
Hey, thanks for watching the Faith and Culture Show. If you'd like to continue this particular episode, please go to the Rumble link below or click on the QR code and join me on the free speech platform over there. Look for the name of the episode and start about the 10-minute mark. I hope to see you there.